Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we are going to be discussing 8 series that I have decided to DNF. Now, 6 of these series are for sure I'm DNFing, I'm giving up, I didn't enjoy them, we're done with them. We're not going to give them a second chance. 2 of them, I could be convinced to try again. For whatever reason, I have some itty bitty little bit of interest to keep going. I didn't have any strong feelings towards the series as a whole, so I never felt the need to continue. But if you say I should, I might continue on with them. So let's just get right into the first book, which is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I didn't DNF this book. I did finish this one. I DNF'd the second one, which is Siege and Storm, I believe. I actually was enjoying the first 50-ish pages of Shadow and Bone, but once we got past that, it really started to struggle for me, and I think you can really tell that this is Leigh Bardugo's first novel and first series, because I've also read Six of Crows and I've read Ninth House, and I love those. I adore them. So I know I am a fan of Leigh Bardugo. It's just this series really did not work for me. I was listening to the audiobook for Siege and Storm because I had to put down the physical book because I couldn't force myself to read it. So I tried going through the audiobook and I had it up to 3 times speed. And I was like, just get through it, just get through it. And I think I had maybe 2 hours left of this audiobook. And I got to a point where I was realizing I'm literally just forcing myself to finish this series and to get through it. I'm not enjoying it. I basically hate reading it, so I might as well give up. Like I said, I did read Six of Crows, but I still haven't read Crooked Kingdom yet, and I wanted to try and reread Six of Crows to get to Crooked Kingdom, but I wanted to read the Shadow and Bone series first to read, the whole Grishaverse, so I could probably eventually continue on to, King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, but I just could not finish this. I didn't like it. So I think I ended up looking up spoilers, which I'm probably going to have to relook up because I don't even remember the spoilers that I looked up for this series. And then eventually I will get to Six of Crows. But this series, I think it's time. I accept it and I'm finishing it. I didn't like it. The next series is Wayward Pines by Blake Crouch. And I think at this point, I feel like I've accepted that Blake Crouch is maybe just not an author for me, because I did also DNF Dark Matter, which is, I think, one of his most popular books, as well as Wayward Pines is, I believe, one of his most popular series. And neither of these two things worked for me. I can't really say why I don't want to continue on with Wayward Pines, because it is somewhat of a spoiler. You learn some things at the end of the first book that kind of really switches the series to something very different than what it was, because this does start out. We follow our main character, Ethan Burke, who is a Secret Service agent, and he goes to the town of Wayward Pines because 2 other Secret Service agents have gone missing when they were going to this town to investigate something. I don't remember exactly what. On the way to town, he gets into an accident. He wakes up in the hospital. He has no ID, he has no cell phone, he has no way of contacting the outside world. And the people in this town are very weird, and some off-putting things are happening. Anytime he tries to leave the town, he ends up right back inside the town. So he has no way of escaping, he has no way of contacting anybody, and the town is just giving off very weird vibes. And at the end of the book, some things are revealed that kind of turns the book into it leads into a different trope that I'm not the biggest fan of. So I don't think this story is really for me. And I did start the second book, and at that point, our main character did start getting on my nerves. So I just figured, I'm not enjoying the character, I'm not enjoying the story. It's time to call it and end it and put myself out of my misery. Because, like I said, I think Blake Crouch just maybe isn't an author for me, and I just need to stop reading his books. The next series is The Friend Zone by Miss Abby Jimenez. And now this is somewhat shocking to me that I didn't like this, because I did really enjoy Part of Your World. I did not love Yours Truly. I think I gave it 3 stars. And then after both of those, I read this, and I hated this book. Both of the characters were very insufferable, and the whole storyline was really insufferable. This follows our main characters, Kristen and what is this man's name? Josh. And essentially, Kristen gets a pretty bad diagnosis, and because of that, she just wants to remain friends with Josh because she feels like if she tells him, he'll compromise what he wants just to be with her, and she doesn't want that, which is noble. But both of these characters suck. because Josh sucked less than Kristen did, but Josh is very much thinking of Kristen like, oh, she's not like other girls, she's so different, and that shit was annoying. And then Kristen refuses to tell Josh what's going on, but will only put him in the friend zone and won't acknowledge that they have feelings. Anytime he somewhat gets close to her, she starts to ghost him. She just doesn't talk to him. But then she starts to miss him. So she's like, okay, let's hang out again. And then he starts to get even closer and then she ghosts him. And she's keeps saying she does not want to hurt him and she doesn't want him to be involved in all these things. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, if you feel that way, then just cut him off. Like, yeah, it'll hurt you and it'll hurt him, but at least he'll be able to move on at some point. But you keep pulling him back in and then pushing him away and then pulling him back in and pushing him away. It was annoying. It was so annoying. The whole book was so irritating. And I know a lot of people don't really like the ending because this book does deal with infertility. So know that going into it. But I actually didn't like most of the parts of it because there is something that gets thrown in there that is so out of left field, that was so unnecessary, and it ties into the next book, which is also why I don't want to read that book. So I think I'm done with this. And to be honest, I am giving Abby Jimenez one last shot with Just for the Summer. And if I don't like it, I might be giving up on her as an author as a whole. Next series is Bridgerton, which I'm sure we've all heard of. I read The Duke and I a couple years ago, and I will say, it was fine. I definitely read, the scene that nobody likes. I didn't like it, but also, and I didn't like the scene, and I also didn't like that by the end of the book, he was apologizing to her. Because I'm like, if you're going to do that, at least have her, like, apologize or acknowledge she did something wrong. But everyone's like, no, 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 you didn't do anything wrong. You're totally fine. It was justified, you sexually assaulting your husband. But whatever. I did still want to read the rest of the series, but a lot of people who have read the series and have watched the show, they all just say, just watch the show. Like, it's better. Like, the books don't live up to what the show does. And I don't feel the need to force myself to read through these because, to be honest, the show does look more interesting. I think I started season 1 at one point and I never finished it, but I have watched Queen Charlotte and I did like that. So I just don't think the books are where it's at for me. I think there are other historical romance series that I'd prefer more, that follow like a family, that I can read, and I'm not going to bother wasting my time reading this 7-8 book series when I didn't really like it. The next series I DNF'd was Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. Is that who it's by? I don't remember. You'll have it on the screen, so you'll be able to tell me if I'm right or wrong. But I read the Caraval series, which is the like prequel series to this one, which, I mean, you can read either or, but I know people recommend you read the Caraval series first, which is what I did. I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was fine. And then this series, I read Once Upon a Broken Heart. It was good. I think I gave it 4 stars. Like, I enjoyed it well enough, but I enjoyed it in spite of our main character, Evangeline, who was irritating and dumb and just kept putting her trust in people that, like, have shown her she should not trust them, but she keeps, like, trusting them over and over and over again. And that shit will send me up a wall, and it did. And everyone was saying that, like, the end of book 2 was just so good and it was so, like, shocking, like something happened. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll read through book 2. And I think I got maybe 30% of the way through book 2. And I could not force myself to keep going because genuinely, Evangeline was ruining the book for me. I liked Jax as a character. I thought he was interesting. He's probably the most interesting character in this whole book. But it was so hard to be, and she's our main character. So, like, I'm pretty sure we only have her POV. We only have her POV in the first book. I don't know if we had more POVs in the second book, but she's still the majority of POVs in that book. And it was just really hard to read at some points because I could not stand her. So I gave up and I didn't read it. And the third book had come out, I think, around the time that I was reading the second book. And fans of the series, like diehard fans, said they didn't like that book as much. So I figured, why am I getting through this series that I'm feeling very lukewarm, if anything, somewhat hostile towards our main character? And I'm not even probably going to like the last book, considering people who did like the series didn't like it. So I gave up and I'm done. All right. The last series that is a for sure DNF is ACOTAR. I know. I read ACOTAR years ago. I read it so long ago that I still have the original OG hardcovers that the series was in before the rebrand. And I read this series back when it was still considered YA. And I did really enjoy those first three books. I thought they were great. I've still never read A Court of Frost and Starlight because I don't want to. I've never cared to. So I was just going to skip over that and go into this. But I don't like Nesta as a character. I never have. I doubt I ever will. And I just don't care about her story at all. Like, I like Cassian, but I don't like her. And I don't think I'm willing to force myself to read this, especially because we have heard that there's going to be more books in this series. Then I'm pretty sure it's going to follow either it's going to be another Nesta book or it's going to follow Elaine, the other sister. And I care even less about Elaine's story. So I don't want to read this book. I don't really want to read the sequel. At this point, I think I should just give up on this. I still have the original books. I still have that. If I want to reread the ACOTAR series, maybe I will, but I doubt I'm going to be reading this. Sorry. These last two, like I mentioned, are more tentative. They're not for sure DNFs. I can still be convinced to pick up the series and keep going. And the first one I want to talk about is the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire. I think these are all, they're not standalones, but they all follow like different characters. And it's a portal fantasy, if I believe. Like, one half of the series, it switches back and forth. So like one book will follow the kids as they've returned to like our world and they're dealing with like the fallout of being in this portal world and like they're back in this world. And then the next book in the series will follow the children in that portal world, if I'm understanding correctly. I've only read the first book, which was Every Heart a Doorway. I thought it was good. I thought it was fine. But I've never continued on with the series. I've never tried to. And it's been forever since I read that first book. So at this point, I was just figured, okay, I'll cut my losses and officially DNF it. But I could be convinced to pick this up. They're all really short. They're novellas. So I think they're all like 100 something pages. So I am willing to give this a second shot. If you guys think like it is worth it to continue on and read them, I'd be willing to. It's just, since I read the first one, I don't know. It hasn't really piqued my interest, but I did listen to it on audio. And sometimes when I read books on audio, I'll feel like so middle of the road about it. And I'm willing to reread those ones because a lot of times when I read them physically, I'll like them much more. So I am willing to give this a shot. Last book of the video, and the last series that I'm somewhat DNF but could be convinced to continue on, is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I read this book, I think, last year. I did enjoy it. I hated part one, but I enjoyed part two and three. So overall, I had a good time reading the book and I liked the ending. But from what I've heard, people say that this didn't really need to be a series and like books 2 and 3 are really unnecessary. And I think there's even like a novella that's like set at a wedding or maybe her wedding. I don't know. But most people say that the next two books kind of suck and they're not as good as this first one. So I don't know. I'm willing to read this as a standalone and have it stay as a standalone. I do own the second book, so I fear I might as well give it a shot and try and read it. But I don't know. Should I just give up? Should I keep going? I don't feel one way or the other about it. I don't really care. But who knows? Maybe I'll give it a shot. All right. Those are all of these series that I have DNF'd somewhat recently. I'm sure we'll be doing another one of these videos somewhat soon because I have DNF'd a few things already this past year. Not series as a whole, just books. So maybe I'll do a separate DNF video just about specific books I've DNF'd recently. And I've DNF'd some popular books, specifically popular book talk books. But that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!